I'm going to unveil this groundbreaking, cutting-edge technology live to you all right now. What's up, guys? Today I'm going to go over things you should consider and what to look out for on blood work before you start a cycle. Of course, using PEDs has risks beyond just blood work to consider. For example, genetic conditions with the heart, you would have to get special genetic tests done and maybe even organ imaging to determine whether or not using PEDs could exacerbate some unknown pre-existing conditions. And there's even some more aesthetic things to consider, like, did you have hormonal acne as a teen that could potentially flare up when you get on cycle? I'm sure you've seen those absolutely nightmare-inducing cases of dudes back where it looks like they've been shot at with a shotgun, just completely covered in acne and cysts.
And it's not just getting acne. Think about what is it doing to his liver. I mean, the liver is literally typing out in Braille, please stop doing this to me. I'm a liver, I don't like that.
Or if you're genetically predisposed to hair loss like I am, and you really care about your hair, that's something to consider as well. But fear not, I can solve all of your hair loss issues with this magical device that I'm now selling for £299.50. And to my loyal subscribers, I'm going to unveil this groundbreaking, cutting-edge technology live to you all right now. You got it over there? Is this it?
Yep, that's the one.
I thought I was going to show them our snake oil lotion.
You're still live, by the way.
What? Damn it. Super physiological levels of androgens will accelerate hair loss if you are predisposed. There's no way around it. Some guys are lucky and they can blast grams of shit without it leaving a dent on the hairline, but I would say those guys are definitely in the minority. Also, personality traits. Anger and aggression can be amplified. So if you're a dickhead just normally, you're going to be even more of a dickhead. If you're prone to anxiety and depression that's not caused by low testosterone and you have normal levels before you start, these can be impacted either for the better or for the worse. It just seems to be random and affects guys differently. Bear in mind though, in a lot of cases, high estrogen seems to be what triggers most of the problems related to that. So if there's a lot of aromatase activity and you're one of those guys that starts getting mood issues once estrogen passes a certain threshold, it makes it even more important to just keep that dialed in. Got a video all about how to do that. If you're interested, check it out. What I hear a lot is the mood changes described as the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And in my experience, that seems to be about right. But what I would add a caveat is that there seems to be some variation depending on what compounds you use. For example, when I'm cruising on test and master on, 150 test, 75 master on, that's my cruise, my mood is just generally better. And some of the more negative states of anxiety seem to be muted a little bit. But highly androgenic compounds can make your mood a lot more volatile. Trend's a great example. One day you could be feeling on top of the world, and then the next day you could be feeling like shit. And it seems like there's no cause or reason. It's just a complete 180-degree switch in terms of how you feel. So those are some things to consider beyond just blood work. Now let's actually look at blood work and what you need to look out for. First up, testosterone. If you've never done anything before and your plan is to cycle and then PCT, it needs to be checked, both free and total. This is going to serve as a reference point, so particularly important if you're going to go the PCT route, so you can have a before and after of your levels, just so you can gauge recovery. It doesn't matter if you're on TRT or you're going to blast and cruise, because you know that once your cycle's over, you're manually setting your testosterone back to the value provided by whatever your protocol is, 120 milligrams, 150 milligrams a week. Next up, HBG and HCT, basically how thick your blood is. Androgens can increase your red blood cell count, some more than others. EQ and Anadrol tend to do it the most. Anadrol is actually a medication developed to treat low red blood cells or anemia. So if your HBG is more than 17 or 18 and your HCT is more than 50, you could be asking for trouble. HBG is hemoglobin. That's the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen from the lungs to muscle tissue where it's needed. And HCT is hematocrit, which is the percentage of the blood that makes up red blood cells. So, for example, if someone says, my HCT is 55, that means 55% of their blood is red blood cells, which is high, by the way. It should be less than 50. Actually, a lot of endurance athletes and fighters will use a drug called EPO, which thickens the blood and makes it more oxygen rich, which increases endurance to give them an edge over the competition that aren't using it. It can increase HCT up to as high as 65, which is absolutely crazy if you think about it. They've basically got syrup for blood. But it's that thick blood that gives them such an endurance advantage. Obviously, though, that's fucking dangerous and it'll increase your chances of a stroke or a heart attack, so I definitely don't recommend doing it. It's very popular in professional cycling. I think the classic example is Lance Armstrong, right? Tour de France. He was on it, and to be fair, probably most of his competition was on it as well. But Lance was the one that got caught and demonized in the media.
Tonight, cyclist Lance Armstrong has a new battle to fight. The U.S. anti-doping agency alleges he cheated for years.
Lance Armstrong could go from one of the greatest American athletes of all time to the worst disgrace in a sport afflicted with doping.
You saw Lance Armstrong inject EPO.
Yeah, like we all did.
For a lot of guys, you can fix HBG and HCT by just being more hydrated. The more you drink throughout the day, the more it's going to dilute your blood. Smoking can elevate it as well. Good excuse to finally quit smoking if you want to do a cycle. As a last resort, you can donate blood as well, but I only recommend that really if you've tried everything else to lower it. Next is GGT, which is an enzyme concentrated in the liver. It's a better marker to go by to determine liver health than AST and ALT, because high ALT, AST doesn't always indicate liver damage, whereas high GGT in conjunction with elevated AST, ALT does indicate it. Most of you won't need to worry about that though, unless you're a raging alcoholic or you're popping superdrols like the Skittles. Next up, cystatin C, which is a marker for the kidneys, and that should be really less than 0.9. Some people will say use creatinine for kidneys, but cystatin C is a better marker to go by because creatinine can actually be elevated from just working out and the breakdown of amino acids in muscle tissue, which obviously isn't kidney damage, is it? So go with cystatin C for measuring kidney health. Finally, total cholesterol, which is measured by adding your HDL to your LDL and then 20% of your triglycerides. It should really be less than 190, and androgens will make it worse. So it's a good idea to get it as low as you can before you start a cycle. How do you do that? Well, the biggest impact on cholesterol is diet. So cleaning that up and getting rid of trans fats, which is found in processed food and fast food. Get rid of all of that and do your best to limit saturated fats. So cheese, butter, full fat milk, that sort of thing. I really like cheese. And about 6 months ago, I decided to give it up to help with cholesterol and reduce inflammation. And my skin has just never been clearer than what it is now, which is interesting. So if you struggle with little breakouts and you're eating cheese, give that a go for a couple of weeks. Cut it out and see if your skin improves. Back to cholesterol. Cardio can lower LDL, the bad cholesterol, and raise HDL, the good cholesterol. And I recommend that guys that are using gear do at least 20 minutes 5 days a week. Zone 2, if you go into the gym, as far as I'm concerned, there's no excuse. There's genetic factors to cholesterol as well. Things like the underexpression of a gene that regulates cholesterol, and even genetic mutations and polymorphisms play a factor. Some people can be doing everything right and they still appear to have bad cholesterol on blood work. For some people, that's just the way it is and it sucks. But what I would say is do what's in your control to try and fix it. Do the cardio, clean the diet up, and look into adding supplements if you think that's necessary. Speaking of supplements, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before, but citrus bergamot lowers LDL. Niacin increases HDL and lowers LDL. Omega-3 fatty acids, so your fish oils, they lower your triglycerides and raise your HDL. Psyllium husk lowers LDL. Red yeast rice contains something called monocolin K, which is actually very similar to the prescription statin, lovastatin, which significantly lowers LDL. Berberine lowers LDL and triglycerides and also has a ton of other benefits. It's almost like a natural metformin. And that's really it for health. Some other things I would look at is fasted insulin and glucose. If you have high fasted insulin, you probably have some insulin resistance going on, particularly if your body fat's normal and you're not obese or something. Fasted glucose is also something to check related to that. It should be less than, I would say, 85. And fasted insulin, I would say less than 5. Any more than that, and you could look at incorporating some type of fasting on your off days, or modifying your diet into a sort of carb cycling type approach with high days and low days. So on the low days, your insulin resistance is reset. I hope this helps, guys. Drop the video a big fat like and subscribe for more of this content. For sourcing, coaching, and consultations, check out the blog enhancedplayer.com. See you next time.